All right, Rising Church, welcome to week 4 in our Isaiah 201 series. Hopefully you've had the chance to do your reading, chapters 17 through 24 this past week. This next week, you're going to look at 25 through 32. And so today it's kind of a tough one because as we talked about before, last week we mentioned you're going into this period or into this section of Isaiah that's called the oracles against the nations, where he's just kind of like one after the other just starts naming off these nations. As you come to next week, he's going to start focusing more and more and more on Judah and Israel and Jerusalem specifically and kind of their situation. But today he's kind of like just broadly kind of going over all these different nations and kind of this preaching against them, and because they've turned their backs on him. And even he uses this word I really appreciate in chapter 17. He talks about how they rage. They rage like the roaring sea. They're roaring against God. They're like, God, we will not bend our knee to you. We will not listen to you. We will not allow you to be God. We want to elevate ourselves over you. And so it's kind of this idea, again, as we've been saying throughout this whole series, where God, as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, has to humble mankind because mankind is trying to elevate himself. As we talked about last week, that's what God has to do because man is so arrogant and man is so prideful that he's elevating himself or trying to elevate himself above God. And so God's got to push them down a little bit and lower them down a peg or two. And so today we kind of come to, I think it's a broad kind of overview of the whole section that you read. Again, the oracle against the nations. And I want to talk specifically about when he talks about Egypt, he talks about Assyria. And we've been mentioning this throughout the series, but if you look at the Fertile Crescent, kind of like the ancient Near East and the early civilization, you have on one kind of end of the crescent, you have Egypt, and then you kind of have Israel in the middle. And as we've been saying, on the other side, you have Babylon, you have Nineveh or the Assyrians, you have the Medes, the Persians. They're on the other side of it. And so there's always kind of this tension between Egypt and Assyria, and Israel is kind of stuck in the middle. And so Egypt will rise to prominence and they'll go take out Assyria. Assyria will rise to prominence and they'll go out to take out Egypt. And again, Israel in the middle is caught in the crossfires. And so it's interesting because you see some of the imagery this week of both Egypt and Assyria, and he's talking about what's going to happen to Egypt and Assyria. And it's kind of really the question ultimately that's being asked in a lot of Isaiah is the question, if you remember, the field commander for the Assyrian army, when he marches up to Jerusalem from Lachish, and he's yelling up to the people on the wall, and he's asking Hezekiah, hey, who are you relying on? Who are you depending on that you kind of rebel against me? Like, who do you think you are? Who's your confidence? Where's this confidence and this peace come that you can, kind of assert your independence from me? And it's kind of this really important question because it's this question of who are you relying on? Who are you trusting in? And at one point, King Ahaz trusts in Assyria to back him up, and then Hezekiah is trusting in Egypt to back him up against Assyria. And so it's always these three kind of at play. And so the question that's being asked is a relevant one because the question ultimately is who do you trust? Who's your rock? Who are you relying on? And so it's kind of interesting because throughout this section, I don't know if you caught on, but he's saying the people, they're trying all these things and none of them are going to work. In the day of disaster, none of these things are going to work for you. It's like they're looking to their altars. They're looking to the work of their hands. They're looking to their idols, their false idols, in order to deliver them. That's not going to pan out. Egypt was known for its wisdom and for centuries they were on top, and they're known for the Nile River and kind of like their agriculture and their wisdom. And it's like in chapter 19, it's just like all those things are going to be taken away from you. All the smart, like where's your wise men now? What are they doing now? Who are these people that are leading you and guiding you, telling you where to go now? Like they got nothing for you. It's like I'm taking away all those things that you rely on and you trust in. They're being stripped from you because the point is you need to trust in God. That's who you ultimately need to lean into. And so over and over again, even in chapter 20, he's talking about Egypt and Cush, which is Egypt. And he says, see, what has happened to those we relied on, to those who we fled to for help and deliverance. It's like, what happened to all these things I put my hope and my faith and my trust in? And just one by one, it's just like, nope. So who are you going to trust in? That's the question. It's the same thing that happened to King Hezekiah. It's like one thing after another. Like, what are you going to trust in? In fact, chapter 22, that's what it's all about. It's all about, hey, Jerusalem, who are you relying on? Who are you trusting in? And I love what he even says in verse 8. He's like, the Lord stripped away the defenses of Judah, and you looked in that day. He's like, I stripped away everything that you were dependent on and trusting in, whether it's Egypt, whether it's yourself, whether it's your wisdom, whether it's these false gods. It's just like one after the other. I'm just taking these away until ultimately, will you trust me? Will you trust me? He's like, you looked in that day to the weapons in the palace of the forest. That's their armory. All your weapons you've stored up, all your chariots and all your spears and all your swords and all that. Like, you've relied on it, and I've just stripped that all away from you. You saw that the walls of the city of David were broken through in many places. You stored up water in the lower pool. You counted the buildings in Jerusalem, and you tore down houses to strengthen the wall. You built a reservoir between the two walls for the water of the old pool. He's like, you've done all these things to prepare for this, but will they deliver you? You've torn down houses so you can make the wall broader. You can actually go today to Jerusalem and see the broad wall that they built. You can go and see the tunnel Hezekiah built in order to bring water into the city so they could have a reservoir for when they were under siege. Is that going to deliver you? Is that going to save you? All the things that you have come up with? Verse 11. You built a reservoir between the two walls for the water of the old pool. But you did not look to the one who made it. You did not look to the one or have regard for the one who planned all this long ago. The Lord Almighty, the Lord of armies, called you on that day to weep and to wail, to tear out your hair and put on sackcloth. He's like, what God wanted you to do through all this is to repent, to turn back to him, to stop rebelling against him, to acknowledge that he is God and you are not, to look to him to be your savior, to look to him to be your deliverer, to look to him to be your rock, your foundation, to look to him to be your shade from the heat and your refuge from the storm. He's like, that's what God is trying to get you to the point where he just takes these things away until hopefully you'll turn to him, but you would not do that. Instead, he says, there's joy and there's revelry, slaughtering of cattle and killing of sheep, eating of meat and drinking of wine. Let us eat and drink, you say, for tomorrow we die. It's like a complete denial or ambivalence towards what's happening and just trying to escapism instead of realizing we need to repent. We need to repent. And so kind of the ultimate question, I think, through this whole thing is, who are we putting our trust in? That's the question that's being posed to the nation of Judah. Like, who ultimately are you trusting? Who are these nations trusting? And I love what he says, because this is like a great prophecy. I don't even know if you caught it or not, but you're like, wait, what's going on here? Because he starts talking about Assyria, Israel, and Egypt together. And he says this in chapter 19, 23. In that day, there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go up to Egypt and the Egyptians to Assyria. The Egyptians and Assyrians, check this out, will worship together. In that day, Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. The Lord Almighty will bless them, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance. Isn't that a beautiful moment? You're talking about these countries that are raging against each other, who are constantly, for centuries, millennia, battling each other out. And he's like, who's going to bring peace between these two gigantic, powerhouses? God is. And they are together going to worship with Israel, the one true God of Israel, because that's who they will ultimately have to rely on. And so there's going to be these people from Egypt, people from Assyria, and these people from Israel who will together worship the one true God. And I just think that's a beautiful picture that gives us hope, because what's going to bring peace in the midst of all this chaos and this war? It's like God does. Ultimately, Jesus does. Jesus is the peace between all these warring nations that are raging against the Lord. And when they will bend the knee and when they will acknowledge God, when they'll submit to him, then he brings peace between all of them. And that's a day that hasn't come yet, that's to come, but that's a day that we can look forward to, when there will be peace in the Middle East. It's kind of a common phrase you've probably heard, but there will be peace. Because Jesus is the peace that brings all these pieces together, so that there is no more. Because we stop raging against God and we submit to him, and then we can experience and have peace. And so as you kind of unpack today, as you continue looking through 17 through 24, hopefully that's going to help you kind of navigate some of those pieces and tie the connections and put the pieces together before we kind of move into the next section, which again focuses more on Israel specifically, as we get to chapters, I'm going to get confused here, 25 through 32. I think that's what's this week. And so hopefully this gets you moving in the right direction. Hopefully you'll be able to share something that stood out to you from the past 8 chapters and answer some of the questions that will help you kind of chew on this a little bit more as we feast on God's word. So thanks, and we will see you next week.